So hello guys, today in this episode we have a special guest on our show, Mr. Arvid Kahl. He's an entrepreneur, an author and a software engineer. So let's dive into his mind and see the video.
So hello guys, welcome back to the Subham Show. So today we have a special guest on our show, Mr. Arvid Kahl. So welcome to the show, brother.
Hi, thanks so much.
So people who are listening you for the first time, I would request you to give a quick introduction of you, please.
Sure. So I'm a writer, I'm a software engineer, and I'm an entrepreneur. I spend a lot of my time talking to people on Twitter about entrepreneurship. And as a consequence of that, I've been writing a couple of books on these topics, both on the journey of my own software as a service business that I co-founded with my life partner, Danielle, in 2017. And we sold it in 2019 for a large amount of money. And for that journey, I wrote a book, and people then talked to me about other things they wanted to know. And I wrote another book about how to embed yourself in communities and learn of their most critical problems and then build a business from there. So this is pretty much my journey from software entrepreneur to writer at this point, now to community person, I guess. So that's kind of where I am, very active in the indie hacker and online entrepreneurship community.
So Arvind, one thing I have learned from you, which is to build a successful business, you have to know your audience. And so I want to know from you is that how to know your perfect audience? Like who is your customer is? What's the strategy behind knowing this?
Right. There's a lot of different approaches to how to build a business, right? So many people, they either start with an idea, or they start with a problem, or they start with, I don't know, just a solution, a technology that they really like, and then they try to build a business around that. I have found that if you want to build a bootstrap business, a business that you fund with your own money, or you don't have financing, you don't have millions from somebody else. If you want to build a business like that, you want to be as sustainable and as validated as possible every step along the way, because you don't want to run the risk of having your business blow up, right? If your money is in there, it should work from the beginning. So I was looking into how to make this most likely, how to give you the highest chance of build good solid fundamentals and then build a business on top of that. And that is an audience-centric and audience-driven approach, because if you start with the people, you don't have to start with an idea. The idea is actually a result of starting with looking at an audience, looking at a group of people who you want to serve and empower. So the idea that I have, and the framework that I present in the Embedded Entrepreneur, my second book, where people ask me, how can I do this? And I say, well, I'm going to look into this. And then I wrote the book, is to look inside yourself and figure out, who do I really want to help? Who are the people that I care about? I'm a software engineer, I'm a writer, and I'm a bootstrapper. So software engineers and writers and bootstrappers are interesting potential audiences. But podcasters are also potential audiences, because I am both a podcaster and I really love listening to podcasts, right? Or I don't know, like people who have a little garden and they grow herbs to put in their food. I do that too. So those people are an interesting audience too. And it has nothing to do with my professional life as a software developer, right? Everybody thinks, oh, you should only work for the people who you really, really work for in your profession. I don't think it's true. If I can help with something that I do, either by writing a book or making a course or building a software product and running an e-commerce store, and I can help the people that have this little garden and they want to make better herbs for their food just as a hobby, if I can build something where I can serve thousands of these people, this is going to be a sustainable business. So the idea is to go inside to reflect on who you actually want to help. And then in the book, I introduce a little 5-step guide to how to actually sort through all of these audiences. Because if you go through your life for a couple of days, and I really, really recommend it to anybody who wants to start a business, to just take a notepad or do it on your phone if you're a bit more modern, but just really write down the potential audiences that you could serve. You start with all the professional ones that you're already involved with. Then you check with your family, who are they? What are your siblings working as? What are your parents working as? Take those potential audiences because you have some sort of connection, write that down. Then you look Look around you. Every object that I see has a potential audience in there. I see a guitar standing right there. You can't see it, but I can see it. So I know musicians, potentially interesting, people who are learning to play the guitar like me. That would be an interesting audience. And you just go through your life and you make a big list, 20, 30, 40, maybe 50 different audiences. Then you start ranking them. And you can rank them in, I have 4 little steps, just from 0 to 5. You just give each of these steps a point. And then you start ranking them. And the first one is affinity. How much do I like this? How much do I like these people that are part of the market? I really like software engineers. I like writers even more. And I think entrepreneurs are my top audience. They get 5 out of 5. But then I look at guitar players and I think, okay, I like guitar players, but they're not really my people. I don't feel I'm in their community much. So maybe they get a 2. And you go through all of your audiences, you rank them by affinity. And you can already see that some audiences are not really interesting. And if you're going to spend the next 5 to 10 years of your life building a business for them, you better like them, because otherwise it's just going to be painful, right? If you don't like the people you're going to be serving and they ask you questions all day, you're just going to burn out so fast. So you better find a good audience from the start. And affinity helps with that because it cuts off all the people you don't like. The second one is opportunity. You just look into each of these little audiences. You go to a community. I don't know. You go to Reddit and you look at the subreddit. There's a subreddit for everything on Reddit, and you just go to the one for that particular audience. I don't know. For software engineers, it would be software engineering. For people who like smart gardens or tiny gardens, you go into gardening and you just look. Are there interesting questions that people ask? Are there interesting potential opportunities for you to build a business? And you rank that 0 to 5 again. And you do the same thing with appreciation, what I call it. Do people have a budget? Do people even buy things in that market? I know as a software engineer, people buy software products all over the place, right? If I built something and I need an error tracking software, I pay $10 a month to go for Sentry or Honeybadger or something like that. I know that software engineers spend money on problems, but I'm not so sure that technically with the gardening people, maybe they don't spend that much money on, software products or anything like it. Maybe they just ask their friend to help them and they don't have a budget for that. So that kind of budget appreciation is also an important thing to rank. That's the third one out of 4. And then lastly, I look at the size of the market. Are there enough people for me to actually build a business for? Because some things, there aren't too many people out there. There probably are a lot of gardeners, but maybe there are not too many people who have really small gardens, or in an apartment, maybe they only have a garden in the balcony. Are there enough people, in that space for me to actually build a business? Or are there too many people? Because the moment you have a gigantic market, then you're competing with the big companies in the space, right? If you're building software for everybody, all of a sudden you're competing with Microsoft, with Google, and all these gigantic companies that have millions of dollars just in marketing money, while you have $20 for marketing. It's a very different situation, right? So once you rank them in those 4 categories, you just add up all the numbers, and then you have a list of audiences that are interesting. And then you take the top one, or the one that you resonate with most, on top of the list. And from there you can go on. But that's how you find your initial audience. You just look around, you put it all in a list, and then you start ranking it. That's what I recommend, because I've seen this. I've been a mentor to a couple people, and I do a lot of consulting with founders as well. And I've seen this work a lot. People really, really like to just reflect and then methodically and data-driven go into it and rank, and then they see what really could work for them the best. And then you dive into that.
So what's the best way of converting your followers into your audience and then into your customer?
Okay, well, I think this whole audience building process is a very dynamic process, right? Because you go into a community, you start out, because most people, if you're not already part of the community, let's say as a software engineer, I've always been part of the software engineering communities. But if I were to do the whole gardening thing, let me just stick with this example. I would try to find communities where people talk about gardening a lot. And I already mentioned Reddit. I know that there is a lot of blogs out there where people share their knowledge. There's a lot of YouTube channels where people really, they just put a GoPro on their head and they go into their garden and they start digging. It's really cute. And you see there's just a lot of people sharing information, and that's where you want to be, because that's where you learn all about what to do, how you can help these people, and you can attract them to you, right? On Twitter, if there's a gardening community on Twitter, you would just engage with people. And that's one of the biggest things you have to do, particularly when you start out. You have to talk to people. You always have to talk to people, because if you only do it in your own mind, there is no validation. It's just assumptions. So you have to go out there and start become part of the communities where people actually are talking about the challenges that they have in whatever theme or topic that you're interested in. And over time, this engagement, when you talk to people who, let's say in the gardening thing again, like I want to grow parsley in my garden, but I had such trouble with this soil. I don't know, how much do I need to water it? And if you go in there and you have a conversation with people and you share your experience, they recognize that you care not just about them, but about the community at large, because you do it in a public forum, right? You talk to people and you give them your experience, and other people see it and they learn from it too. And that puts you into the position of an expert, or at least a person that is becoming an expert over time. And that's what you want to be, because when people follow you because of what you know and how you share it, they become not just followers, but they actually actively listen to you and they help you. The listening part is great if you want to sell to them, but selling is as important as it is for a business. It's not the only thing. You want to build an actual relationship with people, because if you don't build a relationship with people, you might sell to them once and then they're gone. It's like this whole what audience first used to mean, and I don't understand it in that way, but it's just build an audience and sell them something, right? Build an audience of followers, convert them into somebody who listens to you, and then sell them something and goodbye. I don't believe that's a good idea. I think you should build a relationship-based exchange with a lot of people who help you and you help them. It's a give and take situation. And then you sell them something, and then over time you can sell them more because you have a relationship and they see what you do is worth paying for. So you don't just sell it to them, they actively buy it from you. And that's a different thing, right? Because they want what you have because it's so helpful that it's worth more than the money they give you. And that's a fair exchange between equals. It's not just you overpowering people with messaging. I don't like that. It's actually an equal exchange. And over time, that's a very strong bond between people. So followers isn't everything. It's about actually having a relationship with those people. And I actively do this. I have 27,000 followers on Twitter at this point. I still try to engage with every single person. Whoever it is, wherever they're from, however many followers they have, if they have 10 or 10,000, or it doesn't matter to me, because I know that each person that I have a relationship with is somebody that I will benefit from, they will benefit from me, and the community will benefit from the whole interaction. I mean, that's how we have started communicating, right? Yeah. We just chatted in a DM on Twitter. Yeah. And that is such a nice thing, because you get to meet so many people and they have all of their little stories. Everybody has their projects, and I find it amazing to see what people do, and I want to be part of it, which is why I'm here, right? Because I just enjoy having a chat with somebody who has the same interest and the same passion for entrepreneurship as I have. And if people notice that, they will follow you and do much more. And then you can, over time, convert them into people that actually buy your products. It's really about engaging with them where they are. You have to be a real human being and talk to people. You cannot avoid that. And you shouldn't avoid it, because you learn a lot in those conversations too.
So what's the best way of starting a conversation? So I'm really bad at starting a conversation. So this is why I started podcasting, due to which I can network with people. So how can...
Okay. That's the hard part, right? The hard part is like cold email. It's the same thing. Like you never know how to do it right. Yeah. And even if you try, you will have those moments where people don't react. I know I've done the same, and I still have this. I reach out to people and there is no response. It just happens because people are busy or they don't see it, because Twitter DMs is the worst interface that you can imagine in terms of how to, like it's just really not easy or nice. And emails, I get so many emails, I just ignore some because I don't see them. It's not that I actively ignore it, I just don't see them. It's too much. So you will always have some sort of miss, and it's not everything is going to be a hit. But what I would recommend, and that's the easiest part, because it also is not as complicated as doing like cold outreach, is to join people in an ongoing conversation. Let's say you wanted to talk to me, or you want me on your podcast. So you would go to where I am, you would follow me, and you would look where I'm part of a conversation, where I'm chatting with people. And then you would look at, okay, which conversation is something that I could contribute something to, and then you would join the conversation. So that does two things. First off, you show that you actually want to be helpful within the community, which attracts more people to you, which is great. But it also shows to me that you're somebody who would really who's just helpful. You're part of this. Your name appears somewhere in my conversation, so my mind remembers you the next time you reach out to me. Do that a couple of times, and then your name sticks in my mind. I will likely follow you because everybody that I have a conversation with, eventually, if they make a good point, if no matter if it's with or against my opinion, I don't care. If they make a good point, I will follow them because it enriches my life. So if you just go to that conversation and participate, over time, I will likely build a relationship with you because I just value people who want to do the same with me. And I think that works for a lot of people, particularly for people who have a lot of followers. Like if you find people like Peter Levels, who has 100,000 followers, and he doesn't follow anybody. He has a couple lists and stuff. It's more complicated with him. But if you engage with him on a regular basis, it's very likely that you establish a dialogue. And then he might reach out, and then you have a conversation going in the DMs, and you can take that wherever you want to take it. You still want to be respectful, of course, but you can be more straightforward with what you would like if there is a meaningful, equal exchange somewhere. So just show up where they already are. I call this, there's two things. One of the ways I do this is called audience audition, which is really nice for people who have a really small following at the moment. You essentially just put somebody on Twitter in your notifications whenever they post something. And then when they post something, you check it out and you look at where you could contribute, what you can actually put in there. And only when you have something meaningful to contribute, you reply to that tweet, which puts you in front of everybody who is in the audience of that particular person that you follow. So it's your audition in front of their audience. You show what you have to share, and then people might follow you back. That's the kind of, if you aim at their audience, if you want to get more followers. And then it's kind of a personal audition if you do the same to build a relationship with that person. But in both ways, you have to go where conversations are already happening. It doesn't help for you to just tweet something into the void. You will never have people react to this. So go to where people are already exchanging, and it's going to be much easier. And it's not cold. It's a warm conversation. You're just joining. It's like you walk up to people at a party who are already like 5 people in a group. Well, now you're number 6, right? It's not as bad as if you were to walk up to a single person standing there alone and you would have to strike a conversation. So it's much easier. And for the introverts, and I think I used to be one, it's different now because I'm just doing a lot of speaking, I guess, but I also have this problem. I have a hard time reaching out to people where I don't really know, like, how do I have to talk to them? What should I be using? Just go to where they're already chatting and you could just get into the flow, and then you're right in the middle of a conversation.
So what's the best way of building a successful bootstrap business? So to the audience who don't know what bootstrap is, I'll give a little context, which is there is 2 ways of building a business, which is one, you raise money, and one, you put your own money and then you get profit from a business, and then you put the profit again to generate more profit. So what's no one can answer better than you, because you are also known as bootstrap founder.
Yeah, right. Well, thanks for the question. That's a hard one. As I have an easy answer, but it's still hard because every business, every kind of entrepreneurship, there's always a risk, right? You just said funding. If you take venture capital or something, then there's a lot of risk because the chances of you actually making it to hypergrowth, like making so much money that the people who invested, I don't know, millions into you as a founder, you have a really slow or small chance to do this, but you still have a chance. So there's just risk in bootstrapping, where you fund yourself and you reinvest and you try to really minimize expenses and maximize revenue. There is also risk, but maybe not as much, because you have a much clearer path. You don't need hypergrowth, right? It's enough if you make enough money to sustain the business and maybe pay yourself a little bit. So that's, for most bootstrappers, reaching that point is then, after that, everything is a bonus, right? For a venture capital funded business, you have to reach, unicorn levels to be considered a success. A bootstrap business, you're a success when you can feed yourself, your family, and put some money aside. Already successful. So how to do this is what I initially kind of hinted at earlier when I said you start with the audience. You start with the people you want to serve, because I think validation is your biggest helper along the way if you want to build a bootstrap business. Validating that you're serving the right people, or that the people you're serving, there's actually enough of them, which is why market size was a part of this initial audience discovery 5-step process, right? You want to see, is the market big enough? And once you have figured out who do I want to help and empower, And is the market big enough? Do they have opportunity and appreciation in there? And do I like them? You know, okay, these people actually exist. I did my research. I know that there is, I don't know, 20,000 people in Europe doing tiny gardens. Just a fake example here, right?
Yeah.
You've done the research, you know it. And then you go into their community. That's the second step. And you go into embed yourself into the communities where these people are. And then you figure out, so what problems do they have? What real problems do these real people have? You just take a note whenever somebody complains, whenever somebody asks for a recommendation or asks for help, or they ask for an alternative to a product that they're already using. Each of these is an interesting thing because, you know, maybe you can build a better product, or maybe you can build the first product in the space, or maybe you can build a solution that is very much different from the existing things. All of this comes from being inside a community and observing and listening to what people have to say. And then you take notes, and after a couple of weeks, maybe a couple of months, because you need to spend a lot of time in there to get all the different facets and engaging with people and learning more about their problems, you can say, okay, I've been here now for a month or two. I've seen that these people complain about this problem like every single day. Like there's always somebody complaining about this. They always have a problem with their parsley. I don't know, you know. And then you can say, okay, I'm going to build a parsley app. It's a really bad example, but you know the problem is there. You know that people have it. They continuously have it. They have it all the time. It's super painful to them. And then now I can come up with a solution. And that kind of goes against the whole idea first business building, right? Because if you are in the venture capital space, a lot of people pitch ideas. I want to build the next Uber for cats, or a big logistics system that connects all the trucks all over the world with like a GPS tracking system. There's so many big ideas, but validating these ideas is super hard, because if you start with an idea, you don't really know, is it really solving the problem that people have? Is this this? Now, all of a sudden, there's not that much risk in the idea, because the idea is a consequence of all the learnings that you had along the way. And if you want to build a business that is solid and that will make you money from day one because you're actually solving a critical problem of real people, I think this is the best approach to building a bootstrap business. And that's why I wrote Zero to Salt, my first book, because that is really about this step, about finding your audience, their critical problem, build a solution, and then build a product. Last step. Product, your coding and everything, you don't do that until you actually figured out what you want to help people with.
So now you are the founder of 2 successful books. So I want to know, what's the business model of building a successful book?
It's actually not that much different from a software as a service business, to be honest. The whole process of writing the books has been pretty much the same as if I had built another SaaS business. It's surprising, but I figured this out while I did this, because you have to listen to what people want. They wanted help with building a business. You have to understand where they need help, in which medium, which is either a course or a book, some sort of info product they could consume. And then you have to actually build the product and then sell it to them. It's not much different from building a SaaS business where somebody has a problem, you build it with, I don't know, Ruby on Rails or JavaScript or something, and then you sell them on a recurring basis. The only difference is that for books, you sell once. You don't have this kind of subscription revenue. You have to build marketing into the product, because you cannot market the product you have no retention. Somebody buys the book and then the transaction is over. So what I approached differently here compared to a SaaS business is trying to make everything in the marketing about people telling other people that the book helped them. It's like the word of mouth marketing. I made big efforts to make sure that everything in the book was so pragmatic that people could not help themselves telling other people about it. And the business model really is for me to be part of a community and continuously sharing as much as I know with the community through social media and through appearances on podcasts and on webinars and conferences and all that stuff, so they understand that I have valuable things to say, and then they look into my books and then they purchase them. That's kind of the business model behind books. And one book is not enough for that, because, if it were like the world's biggest bestseller, it would probably be enough. But That's not the case, because I'm selling to a target audience that is a niche. Like my niche is bootstrap founders, software entrepreneurs, right? Nobody who does gardening is interested in zero to sold or in the embedded entrepreneur. So I have to make sure that I sell enough interesting products to that niche to have a sustainable income. But I'm there now with the second book, and I'll be writing a third one because I can't stop writing. It's just super enjoyable. And over time, this will create a passive income stream. It already has created a passive income stream that solidly can pay for everything I need. Right? Obviously, we sold a business in 2019. Money is not the biggest issue in my life right now because we had this exit, but it's still interesting to build another functioning and viable business out of this. And like I said, it's not that much different from a SaaS business, only the revenue model is different. You have to rely much more on word of mouth and the marketing efforts. You can probably do paid advertising. I don't do much of it because I'm so deep in the community that I would rather use that instead of paying money for Google or Facebook to put ads into people's faces. But that's the business model, essentially, selling books and having people recommend them to their peers.
Now, a little off-topic question. Let's move from business to life. So what's the best piece of advice you have ever heard?
Oh, wow. That is a question that I'm very unprepared for, because I feel I get so much good advice and I get so much bad advice. I think the best advice is to always try and understand why somebody is giving you advice and where it comes from. When we talk about advice to begin with, right? Every piece of advice is kind of anecdotal. There's always context that you may or may not understand. So when I take in advice, and I learned this when I went to university, and I was reading all these papers, and they all felt like they were contradicting each other. But then I looked into the people that wrote them, and then I understood, oh yeah, that's why they're talking about this way. And contextualizing advice and always looking at why do they say this and why do they not say anything else is very interesting. It's this whole idea about inverting a problem, right? Not just looking at why is this true, but looking at why is this not false? Like trying to flip it around and see, okay, what else could it be and why would that be false? There's this very interesting thing about problem inversion by Charlie Munger, the billionaire and the investor. And he was doing in World War II, he was a meteorologist for the US Air Force. And he was responsible for charting flight courses for the trips for the pilots in the Air Force, and make sure that they went somewhere safely and they came back home safely. That was his job. So he was looking at the weather and figuring out where should they fly to be safe. And what he did, he inverted the problem. He tried to figure out, how can I try and kill these pilots as most efficient as possible? And then he made maps pointing out, okay, if I fly them into the storm, great, the likelihood is that they will drop from the sky there. Or if I fly them very much like to the north, then it's ice and that will drop the plane too. He made all these maps looking at how could I make this super hard for people to return. And then he inverted it again. And whenever somebody painted a map or he drew a map that looked like the maps he made earlier, he knew, oh, this is dangerous. This is something where I shouldn't let this pilot fly, because I know I tried this earlier and they would have failed if I had flown them like into the storm, right? So the idea was really problem inversion. And I like to do this with as many things as possible. Whenever somebody tells me something, I try to invert it and try to understand why that is wrong, instead of looking at the advice and try to understand why it is right. And it's funny that you ask this, and I guess my mind went there immediately because we were talking about validation earlier, right? You want to know, do I have a great idea? Is my business idea something solid? Yeah. And everybody talks about validation. You have to validate your idea. Well, the thing is, you cannot validate anything. Like theories, if you look at sociology, a theory can never be validated. It takes one counterexample to invalidate any theory. And sometimes the counterexample just hasn't been found yet. So what you can do is you can try to find the counterexample as much as possible to try and invalidate your actual theory. And the longer you spend time trying to invalidate it, but you can't, the more likely that it's actually a valid theory. So that's how I approach most theories, right? I studied philosophy and political science at university at some point, and we learned that no theory can ever be verified or validated. You can only try super hard to find the counterexample. And that means that all theories that we have in life and around us, right, about economics, about biology, about philosophy, they're all just one counterexample away from being disproven. So nothing is really sure. And I love this because this is such an entrepreneurial perspective. You never know, right? There's always risk that something may or may not work out. So by inverting it, looking at how could I destroy my business? It's funny, I was actually writing about this this week for my blog. The next week is that what are the best ways to destroy your business? And it's great to do this exercise, you know, like you can say, well, I spent all the money I have on stuff I don't need. Great, right? And now you have no money anymore. Or I built a tool for people that, and I never asked them if they should use it or if they would pay for it or not. Great idea. Now you build something that nobody needs. It's so nice to do these little exercises. And I do that in life apart from business too. Like I want to buy something. Well, let's say I don't buy it. What is the consequence of this? Instead of what do I get when I get it, is what do I not get if I don't get it? And all of a sudden you just, the possibilities in your mind explode. It's a really nice trick. And I'm using this all over the place.
So Arvind, how to get better at writing? So you are not from the writing background. I know you were a software developer, then turned entrepreneur, then turned writer. So how can someone improve writing?
Well, I have a good answer and a funny answer. Let me start with the one, use Grammarly, use tools that actually take your text that you write and they check it for grammar problems, for typos, for just structural problems. That teaches you a lot. And I guess it's a cheat, it's a hack, because you're using an AI tool to assist with your writing, but it points out certain things, and over time, the more you use it, the more you avoid these things, because you learn how to write it well in the first place. So that's the kind of the technical answer. The other answer, the actual answer that I want to give, is to just consistently write. You don't need to write every single day. Nobody does anything every single day. We need breaks in our lives too. But if you want to write one thing a week, and say you want to write at least 1,000 words a week, and you do that. Doesn't matter if you do it on Monday or on Sunday or every day, like 20 minutes, it doesn't matter to me. Just consistently write. And then over time, you will get better, just because you have written more before that your mind can draw on if you want to write right now. So consistency is the key. And I have a method to my writing. I use the outline method. I start with a title, then I kind of do chapters. Even if it's an article, I do like little bullet points, like introduction, talk about this, and then first big point is, I don't know, like this thing, then the second point, then the last point, and then the conclusion. And I really outline it. And then I fill in each of these points with a piece of text, and it gets bigger and bigger and grows into the final text. That's how I write, because that's how I code. It's the same way, right? I structure my data model. I put a couple of function names. I fill in the first function, fill in the second function. That's where I'm coming from. I'm coming from a technical background, so I use the same structure in my writing. And if you are a developer, just consider that you already have been writing for many years. You've just not been writing for a person. You've been writing for a computer. Right? So you are a writer, and you can draw on the same structure. If you're, I don't know, an object-oriented programmer, you know how to like connect different objects. You can use that in your writing. You can like really connect different articles with each other in the same way. Maybe even inheritance, right? An article that incorporates both functionalities. You can use this knowledge in your writing. But the best structure that I have found for myself is outline writing. Really start with bullet points and then fill them in over time. Collect your ideas in little bullet points under the bullet points and just flesh them out into paragraphs, and do this consistently. Every week I write, and I've been doing this for 2 years now, every single week. Often I write every day. I mean, on Twitter, you write technically, you just write really dense. It's also a good exercise, by the way. If you go to Twitter and you just really spend half an hour a day, if you can afford it, on writing your thoughts in response to other people, that itself is a writing exercise. So people think, oh, Twitter is just social media, but no, if you use it as a medium to convey your opinions and convey your knowledge, all of a sudden you're a writer. You may be a writer that writes really, really short things, but you are a writer. So maybe that's the basic understanding. If you want to be a better writer, first start understanding that you are a writer, and that all the writing you're doing is good to become better at being a better writer.
So let's get back to life again. So are there any quotes or any life lesson that you live your life by or think often?
Well, I try to help as many people as I can as strongly as I can. Empowerment and support and helping people has always been, I guess, for me at the core of who I want to be. Like I don't want to be selfish. I want to be selfless. I don't want to be isolated. I want to be involved. Right? And I want to lift up others because I myself, I know that I am standing on the shoulders of giants. The people that have taught me how to build a business were just normal business people who shared what they knew. And that's what I want to do right now. I have had a lot of success and I'm grateful for it. I have a lot of privilege in my life as well, and I'm grateful for that. So now that I'm in this position where I don't need to do anything, I feel now I can give back to the community. And that's not just business, that's everybody around me, because I've been supported. I'm German, right? So I've been living in Germany forever, and I got a free education in Germany. And I got like university for free in Germany because somebody paid taxes for me to be able to go there. So now I try to do the same, is to empower people to do the things that I have done, both around me and in the society that I live in and in the online communities that I'm a part of. So like, I think the tide raising all boats, that's the mental model that I'm always thinking of when I do anything. How can I help that the tide goes up? Not just the boats, or one boat. I want to see every boat go up. And that's also why I'm in the whole bootstrapping space, because I know that VC is great for people who like to do like these weird moonshot businesses that have a really small chance, but they could be big. I appreciate that. And if you want to do that, perfectly fine with me. But I know that if I help bootstrappers become more successful, then it's not 1 out of 100 that becomes a success. It's 100 out of 100 that become a success. And that's what I want to do. And that's how I live my life.
So lastly, Arvid, what makes a person successful? Also, what first comes into your brain when you first hear the word successful?
When I hear successful, I hear happy. Like for me, success is having an empty calendar. You know what? Our call is the only thing I have on the calendar today. That's how I define success, because everything else I do today is completely up to me. I'm completely independent of anybody else. Whatever I choose to do is what I want to do. And that to me is the pinnacle of success, because money, great, you need it, right? Otherwise, how are you going to eat? But more money does not mean more happiness. But being more free to do whatever I want, now that increases my happiness levels. So that's what success means for me. And how to get there is to optimize your life for it, is to build a business where you're not needed all the time. It's to build a business and maybe sell it so you don't need to do anything anymore. And how to get to this point is to understand that if you follow money, if you follow fame, if you follow, I don't know, like these kind of material things, you're always going to be in this treadmill, in this hedonistic or hedonic adaptation treadmill, right? Where you are at a certain point and you get a little bit higher, and all of a sudden this is your new normal, and then you get a little bit higher and this is your new normal, and you want more and more and more and more. I don't know. I don't want more. All I want is to spend time with my girlfriend and do the things I like. And I don't need more. You cannot have more time in a day. 24 hours is the maximum of that. But I want to get there. I want to have that. That's my pinnacle of success. And to get there, you have to optimize for it. You have to make sure that you're not just like blinders on doing your thing and ignore everything around you. Make sure that everything around you is still part of your life. Because if you only do it for the money, you're losing a lot. And you hear a lot of these stories, right? Where people spend their life building a career and getting rich, and then they didn't spend time with their kids. They get divorced because they didn't spend time with their partners, and they live an empty life in wealth. And I don't think I want an empty life. I want to have a full life. And that's what success is, living a full self-determined life.
So thank you, Arvid, for being on the show. I really appreciated it.
Absolutely. And thanks so much for having me. That was a lot of fun.
So thank you guys for watching out the podcast, and I'll see you guys in the next one.